All right, here we are at Topic Tuesday. And if you really want to change your life, you have to start with your thoughts. We're continuing on from something we talked about on Motivation Monday because the battle for your mind is one of the most important battles that you'll ever fight. That's why Paul says in 2 Corinthians 10:5, take captive every thought. And then in Romans 12:2, he also says, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Notice what he doesn't say. He doesn't say be transformed by trying harder or be transformed by doing something. He says be transformed by thinking differently.
I think that's why so many Christians get frustrated. Focus on changing our behaviors, but never addressing the thoughts driving these behaviors. And I remember when insecurity was one of my biggest struggles. I'd see someone else's life and think theirs was so easy, or someone else's ministry expanding, or someone else's family that looked perfect online. And I didn't realize that the real issue wasn't comparison, but the real issue was the thought underneath it that maybe I'm not enough. And
Mhm.
that thought stole so much of my peace.
I just can't imagine Kathy being insecure. But that's exactly how all this works because unsurrendered thoughts fall into a few different categories: fear, comparison, self-condemnation, and even lots of worry. So if you're feeling some of these, they all pull away from things that are God and towards self-reliance.
So instead of pretending that these thoughts were not there, I first had to notice them and name them, and then speak God's truth over them.
Amen, Kathy. And that brings us back to some of the stay slow process. Remember, it's spirit, thoughts, and then you have to take your actions, which then yielding all of those brings you forward. So fear says, what if everything goes wrong? And I know we've all had these different thoughts, but what God says is, I've not given you a spirit of fear. So we shouldn't fear, we should turn to God. What about comparison that says, I'm falling behind everybody and what all they have? But truth says God's plan for my life is unique. So I don't have to compare to everybody else. We don't just remove lies, we have to replace the lies with truth.
Yeah, honestly, that is what changed them and things for me. And the goal wasn't having fewer thoughts, but the goal was learning to have the thoughts that were of God and to have those thoughts based on truth. And so the battle for your mind isn't won through willpower, but it is won through surrender and one thought at a time. So if this is something that you struggle with, Brian did write a book a few years ago called Talk Truth to Yourself. And there's a verse a day and a truth affirmation a day. And you can get that in the next level support package, or you can even get it through Amazon. So I highly recommend that book.
Thank you, Kathy. But it is very true. The enemy wants to kill, steal, and destroy and lie in the process, but God has the truth for you and for your life. So dwell upon that in Him today, and it'll change your future forever.